Welcome, Space Marines. Today we're going to be covering an article from WCCF Tech, published by them, which will be linked down below in the description, which is going to be covering things like new classes coming to the game, and the differences between PvP and PvE modes, and how your classes will be interpreted from one mode to the other. If that interests you, definitely make sure to stick around, but before we get right into that, if you could go ahead and take 1 second and scroll down and click that thumbs up button and make it glow, that would help me out tremendously. For this video, we're going to go ahead and reach for 25 likes, and while you're down there, consider hitting the subscribe button as well, as we're going to be covering more Space Marine 2 content as it comes out and throughout its release, along with other AAA titles throughout the year, playthroughs, hilarious content, and more. But without further ado, let's jump right into the article. Now, this article is titled Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 Q&A with Tim Willits. We have a game that will exceed expectations. Now, Tim Willits is a Chief Creative Officer over at Saber Interactive, the developers over for Space Marine 2, but he did work for id Software for over 24 years, so it's safe to say this guy may know a thing or two about what he's talking about. One thing that I really wanted to touch on that is at the beginning of the article is this topic here. With Space Marine 2, you are taking a beloved game and finally making a sequel around a decade later. Are you feeling the pressure of the fans? He replies, yes, the Warhammer 40k franchise has been around for 45 years now, and millions of people love the franchise in itself. The first game was very popular, but I also want to say that if you, as a fan of either an action game, have never played the first game, don't worry about that. You can start with Space Marine 2, and it's a complete game. It's actually difficult to play the first game now because it's only on Steam. Personally, I know exactly what he's talking about in terms of expectations from fandoms. I mean, I myself am a huge Halo fan, so anytime something like that is handled and switch hands from Bungie over to 343, there was a lot riding on 343 soldiers. Now, did they deliver? That's very debatable, and when it comes to the Halo show, let's just not talk about the Halo show. But I definitely understand for a developer undertaking a massive franchise like this with such a rich history, of course they're going to have a ton of pressure. And I'm glad that they're verifying that we don't need to play the first one to really comprehend and like the story of the second. I myself have never played Space Marine 1, and I'm fairly new to the 40k franchise overall. But knowing that I'm getting a complete package and something that I'm going to like even from a campaign standpoint most likely, is something that I really am excited about, and I'm assuming a lot of you guys are too. He continues on with saying, there is an expectation from Warhammer 40k fans that we treat the universe with respect and that we get things correct. Then there's an expectation from fans of the first game as well as just fans of Saber and action games. So yes, the expectations are very high, but I believe that we have a game that will exceed those expectations. We have a very dense game with a campaign mode that you can play by yourself or with 2 friends. We have our PvE missions where the story kind of runs parallel to the campaign, and then we have a full 6v6 PvP mode with 3 game modes. So it's a lot to offer. It's all wrapped together in our Saber proprietary technology with the Swarm Tech and AI Director. So we believe we are delivering the true ultimate Space Marine experience. In this, he says a little bit more about the expectations that they're really feeling the pressure of the fans, which we kind of already covered, but they also go into the 3 major game modes that we're going to experience as well. If you want a little bit more in-depth information on all of those game modes, definitely go ahead and make sure to check out our Everything You Need to Know About Space Marine 2 video, which I will link down in the description below as well, as it covers them in entirety, along with gameplay mechanics that you can expect as well. The Swarm Tech that they're talking about really goes back to a previous game that they've made, which I've compared this game a lot to before, which is World War Z. I like that game a lot. It was a pretty tough game to play as well, so I think that toughness is going to carry over to this game as well. And the AI Director, again, is something that kind of gets pulled from Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead really, I feel like, innovated its AI Director, so you're doing the same map, the same missions when you do like some sort of operations or mission, but it's going to be different. Different enemies are going to spawn throughout. This game has sub-bosses, so they will either spawn or not spawn and be in different locations. And again, working with the Swarm Tech, different hordes will be coming at you at different angles with different enemy types in them. So there's a lot of variation and replayability on all of these operations and different PvE modes that we're going to be having within Space Marine 2. Next on up, they asked him, how long did it take you to make this game? He responds, games always take a long time nowadays. about 4 years or so in this case, but we're very proud of where it is now. We're very happy with our work, and the people who played the preview were happy. Pre-orders are great. Right now, what we're focused on is September 9th. You know, making sure that the servers are up and running for everyone, making sure that any issues are ironed up, but everything's looking good. It's all green lights. The game is fun and solid. So yeah, I'm excited about the launch. Now this may seem like a pretty casual or cookie cutter response, but you wouldn't believe how many people or how many games in the past, even just within this year, haven't been up to par with how their servers should be for an expectedly big launch. Not only are they making sure that their servers are hopefully running smoothly at launch, but they're also prepared to iron up any bugs or anything that comes out after the game is published, which is huge news for everybody. So if there's a game-breaking bug, if there's something that's very apparent, maybe an Eternal War bug, hopefully these guys will be able to get on it, release a hotfix or a patch, and everything will be good as new. And as we referred to during our roadmap video that they actually recently released for Space Marine 2, which again will be linked down in the description below, in that video we also touch on, even though the roadmap has major milestones that they're going to be majorly updating the game, in between, whenever it's needed, they're going to be squashing bugs, putting out hot fixes and updates in order to improve the gameplay itself, which is always great to hear when it comes to live service games just like this. Next on up, they asked him, I believe the game was originally meant to come out in late 2023. Can you share what were the reasons behind the 9-month delay, and what did you improve during this additional time? Tim then responds, we just needed more time to polish it. You know that old saying, a game is only late until it ships, but a bad game is bad forever. We wanted to focus on making sure that every component, the single player campaign and the PvE co-op mode, all those were solid. There's a lot to this game, and I feel that players will feel good regarding value and content. When you have all those systems, you have progression, and you have multiplayer. Sometimes things take longer to get right, but I'm glad that we took the time we needed to make sure that we got it correct, because Warhammer 40k fans want it correct. If we screwed something up, they would be mad, you know? And so we really wanted to honor the franchise. We wanted to respect the universe, and we wanted to make the game that people want to play. Again, guys, this may seem like a cookie cutter response yet again, but I'm telling you, this guy has a ton of passion. This isn't something that you hear every day. This isn't something that you hear from every developer. The fact that they went ahead and pushed it back just to polish it, they didn't care about deadlines. They didn't care about their fiscal earnings for the year. They wanted to make something that was right for the players and that people got their money's worth. They got a streamlined progression of content, and they wanted to fully honor the universe in its entirety to the best of their capabilities. This is something that you just don't hear from developers nowadays, man. And it is just great to hear this from a company for a franchise that I'm willing to dive headfirst into, in a game that just looks phenomenal from all the trailers, previews, and gameplay that we've seen so far. And after reading this interview, I'm more than excited to give them my $70+, put hours into this game, and maybe pick up a couple DLC here and there if I'm really feeling it. After this, we're going to go ahead and skip ahead a couple of topics, but the next thing that I wanted to touch on is that the interviewer asked Tim, I know you have a class system for multiplayer modes. Can you talk about that? Tim responds, indeed. Are you familiar with World War Z? It's a little similar. Our game director, Dmitry Grigorenko, was the game director on World War Z, and he's very good at progression, class identities, and attributes. As you play, even in PvE, as you progress, you unlock different classes and you can earn experience. You can use some of that experience to upgrade your characters even in PvP. So it's like World War Z, where you have things like the Assault class, the Heavy class, and the Support class. We have Warhammer 40k names for them, but you can pick one that you like and fits your style, and then you can apply your experience to those classes. The interviewer then asked him, okay, how deep is the progression for each class? Tim responds, it's deep. World War Z was deep. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I feel that players will be happy. Like World War Z, we have updates where we will expand classes, weapons, and game modes all for free. Now, again, if you've seen my roadmap video, which again is linked down in the description, we've already covered the weapons and game modes that we can expect to see, and there's a couple that are unlisted in terms of new weapons. For game modes, we know that we're getting a new difficulty setting and also a horde mode, but But from our knowledge of the roadmap, there is no explanation on their expansion on classes or anything that they're thinking about. The only thing that I could see is that maybe it's tied to one of these major factions being introduced. One of them in Season 2 is the Blood Angel. So maybe if there's a correlating class that's really reputable to the Blood Angels, maybe that's a class that we can expect to be introduced at somewhere around Season 2. And again, Tim does say that the weapons, game modes, and these new classes are going to be free for all players. So you won't have to purchase a DLC or a Season Pass in order to actually get access to all of this. And again, just as a confirmation, the next question for Tim is, do you have plans to add new classes to Space Marine 2 post-launch? And Tim answers, yes, we have plans for it. There will be new stuff for everything. Now for this, I think this is some sort of multifaceted response. I could be reaching too much into it, but here's how I see his response. 1, there is already a confirmation of new classes in this interview. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm not very in-depth with the 40k lore. Definitely let me know what you think is going to be introduced in the comment section down below. But when he says there's going to be new stuff for everything, I think he's also saying that weapons and weapon progressions are going to be different post-launch as well. From what we know, certain classes will have exclusive weapons. So what I'm thinking is some of these new weapons that are going to be introduced are going to be restricted to certain classes as well. Not only that, but maybe there's differences in weapon progression levels as post-launch content comes out for every class. So to put it in simple terms, maybe a weapon can only go to level 5 at launch, but maybe after Season 2, every weapon and every class in the game maybe gets a 6th level. Again, I may be reading too much into this response, but this is how I personally took it. And lastly, real quick, I wanted to touch on one major thing, which is another question that the interviewer asked Tim, saying, are the class skills in multiplayer the same across PvE and PvP, or did you balance them differently? Tim responds, there are similarities, but there are also differences because, obviously, fighting Chaos Marines is way more difficult than fighting Tyranids. There are behind-the-scenes changes and adjustments that allow for challenging, yet approachable gameplay in PvP, as well as having fun with your buddies in PvE. As a follow-up statement, they say, when you're in PvE, it's okay to feel overpowered, in PvP, not so much, right? Tim responds, yes. What's great about PvP is something I call the death dance, where you can't just button mash, you gotta move. You have your blocks, you have your grabs, you have your counters, you have your fast melees, you have your long melees, and then you have your weapons. You need to keep moving and then attack, block, attack. So there is a dance of death that we've created in PvP. So from what I personally take from this is, skills that you get for your classes and maybe even your weapons will have a PvP and PvE usage that's outlined in their description. And if they're not, there's subtle tweaks that are happening behind the scenes. So maybe they say the number is a 1.5 times multiplier, but when it comes to PvP, it's something like a 1.1. And when it comes to the death dance that he described, it sounds like basically they don't want you to just one-hit other opponents. They want you to go ahead, feel the tension, feel fast paced, where you have to block, where you have to go ahead and hit for a melee swing, where you have to go ahead and dodge. They want you to use every little thing that they've created for a gameplay element in PvP, which for me sounds fantastic. It means that the gameplay is going to be more upbeat, that the gameplay is not going to be very simple, and it's going to be hard to take each other down, which if you ask me, personally reminds me a lot of how I would personally describe a multiplayer mode like, say, in Gears of War. Now, there is a lot more information in this WCCF Tech article, a lot of stuff to do with Saber Interactive, even EA, and some stuff about the campaign. But if you do want to go ahead and read the rest of the article, as I said in the beginning of the video, this is going to be linked down in the description below if you want to check it out for yourself. Overall, guys, this interview was amazing to say the least. We got to see the actual passion for not only the franchise itself, but for Warhammer 40k in general. Some of the expectations that they knew the fans had of them, but not only that, some of the expectations that they had for themselves when creating a game for this franchise itself. We got to learn about new classes definitely being introduced later on as we progress through the seasons of the game, and we even got to learn the differences that we'll have between PvE and PvP skills in terms of gameplay. And we're about a full week away from the official launch of Space Marine 2, and I couldn't be more excited. What are you liking the most about what they said? Are you kind of hesitant about anything that they said? If so, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, really quick, as we reach the end of the video here, huge announcement for the channel. We have new membership tiers and perks available for the channel. If you're interested in going an extra step and supporting the channel while getting some cool perks in return, consider becoming a member and getting an opportunity to be listed at the end of videos, just like this one. As always though, your support through viewership, liking, and subscribing is always greatly appreciated and helps me out tremendously against the tyrannid threat that is the YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to catch you guys next time. Peace!